we're returning to what we learned yesterday. This is a speech of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, which he made in, what did we say it was? He made it in 1980. Here it is, 1980. Right, we said 82, right? What was we said yesterday? 1982. The Rebbe made the speech in 1982, and it's talking about a very interesting topic, which is the sacrifices. And the Rebbe asks a very interesting question. You know, the in Judaism, we're waiting for the temple. Then the temple that was the essence of Judaism, not that the temple is destroyed. There's total confusion. That's called exile. The Jews went into exile. The temple, no temple, no temple, almost no Judaism, almost. The Rebbe says, that's not so. Let's not get excited. Let's not go overboard. There is Judaism. Judaism is the same thing, but it's not the same without the temple. It's not the same. Without the temple, it's almost like walking down memory lane. You know, it's just simply not the same thing, not the same kind of thing. It's Judaism. It's 100% Judaism. The temple was destroyed because God wanted it to be destroyed, and it was designed from the beginning. And there's going to be a third temple. Moshiach is going to build a third temple. You don't have to worry. But meanwhile, for almost 2,000 years ago, 2,000 years, we have not had a temple. Okay, what's the big deal of the temple? Sacrifices. When we have the temple, we're going to be able to make sacrifices. And that's what this Torah portion is talking about. Sacrifices, you sacrifice an ox, you sacrifice a goat, a sheep, you pour the blood over here, and you throw this. Some sacrifices are eaten a little bit, and they have to be slaughtered in this place and in that place, and then how you burn it and how you this are the sacrifices. At first glance, the most nonsensical thing that could possibly be, and the whole Torah takes pages and pages and pages about talking about sacrifice. What possible purpose could killing a sheep have to do with anything? Unless you like to eat sheep meat, which I understand is pretty good. But most of the offerings, they weren't eaten. In the morning, they offered 2 sheep every day, one in the morning, one in the end. They didn't eat them. They just burned them up totally. It says not only that, when they burned them up totally, they burned them up with the bones. They didn't take out the bones. And flesh that's cooked together with the bones, I guess if there's enough bones, it's a terrible smell. But in general, even if it was the best smell in the world, what has it got to do with Judaism? Right? Is there any religion now, any normal religion? You know, maybe there's some sort of barbaric, practices in some crazy places that they offer up children or they offer up, animals or something like that. But Judaism offers up animals to them. I mean, here there's these, for animal rights groups, and they're against eating meat in general. They're eating meat in general, but at least, you kill an animal, you eat it, you get some benefit. Here in for sure, there's going to be, big protests in the Holy Temple. And what are you sacrificing on innocent sheep? The sheep didn't do anything. And they got a good point. They have a very good point. What has this got to do with Judaism? Like I said yesterday, I remember the first time I read about this in the Torah, the first time I read through the Torah, I kept looking at the cover of the book. This is the Jewish Torah? Sacrificing animals? That's what they want me to do? And to bring an animal? What in the world? And I thought to myself, they forced me to go to bar mitzvah class. My father wanted me to have a bar mitzvah. So I went to the synagogue. I had to go to the synagogue, like, I don't know, 10 Sabbaths in a row or something. And you went with a suit on, maybe a tie or something like that. You stood up, sat down, didn't understand the word. But one thing I did for sure, no, they did not make sacrifices. Nobody makes sacrifices. Nobody brought an animal into the synagogue and they sacrificed it. It doesn't make any sense. Why sacrifice? So the Rebbe says, this is, okay, let's go. We can understand this. Okay, so the question that the Rebbe asked, this is the title of this whole business that we're asking now, is that it says in the Torah that the reason for the sacrifice is that God gets pleasure. Reach nichuach. God gets pleasure from the sacrifices. That I spoke and my will was done. Right? That's what it says. And we see the same thing by Noah. That Noah came out of the ark, he made sacrifices, and it says the same thing, that God smelled the pleasing smell. Pleasing smell. And so the Rebbe said, what's there to get? What does God smells? It's not that the smell is not good. It's not a good smell. You burn up bones. It's not a good smell. What does God? God gets pleasure because I spoke and my will was done. So the Rebbe says, well, I mean, okay, why doesn't it say that by any other commandments? All the other commandments are God's will. Why doesn't it say in the Torah that I'm happy, I get pleasure because I spoke and my will is done? You put on tzitzis, you put a mezuzah on your door, you give charity, I spoke and my will was done, right? By all other commandments. No, it only says that by sacrifices. What's so special about the sacrifices? Now we're going to see. Yuvan Zeh, we can understand. We did a little bit of this yesterday. A big question, a general question about the sacrifices. A lot of the commentaries talk about this. They explain what is the reason, what possible benefit can there be from sacrifices? That a person brings an animal and he sacrifices it, burns it up, part of it or all of it, on an altar. And with Rashi, we don't find any explanation for this commandment. Other commandments we can see, you put tefillin on your arm and on your head to make your heart closer to God and your mind closer to God. No. You put a mezuzah on your door to remind you that all of your property and everything you own belongs to God. It's a gift of God, etc. All the commandments. On sacrifices, it doesn't say anything. Even though the Rashi in its explanation on the Torah it is not his way to explain the reasons for the commandments. In Pirush Rashi, because Rashi is not an explanation of the commandments, but Rashi just comes to explain the simple meaning of the Torah. But in addition to this, that the sacrifices, they are not an individual commandment, one or a few. Aloklolos mitzvahs rabos, the sacrifices in the temple, there's a lot of commandments there. In quantity, and also in quality. The sacrifices, they are inyan kalali biyuter, perhaps the most general commandment relevant to all the Jewish people. The sacrifices are more encompass all the Jewish people more than any other commandment. That's the whole idea of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle, and the Holy Temple. That's where God's presence was revealed. Anyone who had a doubt what's the God of Israel, you went to the tabernacle, you felt you're being created. You felt that the whole world is a creation. You felt the whole world is being created for a purpose. And you felt the creator. That's the whole purpose of the Jewish people. Hine odzos, but even more, if so, the sacrifices were very general, very important. That was the main thing in the tabernacle, in the temple. And even more in regarding to the sacrifices, she'ena shara rak ma tam ashayla. The question is not what is the reason for this commandment, but at first glance, this is the opposite of any reason. Negative seichel. The commandment of all the other commandments have some logic to them. Some logic to them. They make a little bit of sense, right? Non-Jews also, they have their signs that they wear, they have their rituals that they do, right? They have their customs. We also have ours, so it's a little bit understood. And so Rashi doesn't have to explain so much our holidays and our customs and our rituals. They also have, ours are directly from God. Okay, but still the same thing. But the sacrifices, that's opposite of intelligence. It makes the opposite of sense. You take a whole animal and you burn it up. There's no benefit to anyone. No one gets any benefit from burning it up. It's just total destruction. And it's obvious that this is not relevant, that God gets pleasure from this burning of the offerings. Why? That's what God cares about, that we burn up a cow. But Tamua la'abid mimanu, because God does not want that the money of Jewish people should be lost without any benefit. No one gets any benefit. This is an outstanding, how do you say, screaming out question about sacrifices. Why in the world would God make such a bizarre commandment that no one gets any benefit from. Let's say circumcision, right? At least there's a sign that God told us to do something. You burn up an animal, there's nothing left. There's no sign, there's no anything. We can say that is exactly what Rashi says here. When Rashi says that the reason for the commandments is nachat ruach, it is, God said, it's pleasing to me that I spoke, v'na'aseh ratzoni, and my will was done. She'achen zui kol hakavana, this is the whole intention about the sacrifices. Namely, that there is no benefit from it whatsoever. It makes no sense. That's the point of it. That a person makes the sacrifice, brings an animal, a sheep, to the ak varak, only because this is what God wants. And there's no logical reason for it at all. Something like Abraham taking his son Yitzchak to sacrifice him. This is like against everything Judaism stands for. This is against everything the human intelligence stands for. Right? Those people, even that are pro-abortion, right? Pro-abortion, and there's some of them that are maniacs that say even after the child comes out, right? After the child comes out, you can also kill them in an hour or two. But none of them say that 37 years after the child comes out that you can do an abortion, you can kill him. No, nobody says that. And the whole Judaism is based on that. What type of a thing is that? The answer to that is that's exactly the point. It makes no sense whatsoever. No one benefits from it at all. You're just doing what God says. And of course, we have to remember that we're being created by God. But okay, we're being created by God, but don't drive us crazy. God says, I'm driving you crazy. That's one of the things I'm going to do. Kolomer, in other words, and a pirush, it doesn't mean that there is some sort of a benefit by sacrificing the sacrifices, but people don't know what it is. When you make a sacrifice, you believe that there is some sort of a benefit in this. Like Abraham took his son Yitzchak and he said something good is going to come out of this. He didn't think anything is going to come out of it. He didn't think at all. Elis shekol to Elis, the whole benefit of the sacrifices is only you're doing what God wants. Don't think about it. You can't understand God. That's what God wants. God is good. That's what we believe. That's what Abraham believed. Right? God wants there to be a good world. Yes. How is that going to happen? By means of me killing my son, or by means of no, we don't have to kill our sons, but Abraham killing his son, or burning up a cow on the altar. How is that going to make the world a better place? It makes absolutely no sense. This is making the world a worse place. What's the answer to that? There's no answer. No answer. It makes no sense. That's the whole thing. We're just doing what God wants. That's the whole idea, which is special about the sacrifices. Sharak Bahem, only in them, it says a pleasing spirit to God, and not in the other commandments. Why? Because only in the sacrifices there is pleasure to God, that God actually gets pleasure, right, from his will. God wants us to be existent. He wants us to live. He's creating us. He wants us to do what he wants. When we do what God wants, God gets pleasure. Lamaila mizeh shekiyum mitzvahs, from that, from all the other commandments, is ach v'rak. It's only because zeh shamarti, God said. In other words, living on God's terms and not living on our terms. As soon as you start living on your own terms, then you're on the wrong train. What do we get out of doing things for God's terms? You do the truth. That's all. It's just the truth. You don't get anything from it. Like I say every day I go and put on tefillin, and I'd say, would you like to put on tefillin? The person says, no, I don't want to. What's going to happen to me if I don't? I say, you see what happens to you if you don't put on tefillin? Absolutely nothing. You live a good life. You're happy. Right? You see a lot of Jewish people, they put on tefillin, they're miserable, they're uptight all the time. What do you get from putting on tefillin? What do you get from doing what God wants? You're doing what God wants. That's all. God gives us everything. He gives us life. He gives us eyes. He gives us unconditionally. Even if we do all the sins in the world, he keeps us alive. So if he does everything for us for nothing, for free, so do something for him for free. What happens if you don't put on tefillin? What happens if you don't do what God wants? You see what happens? Nothing happens. In the time of the temple, maybe there was some sort of, but now it doesn't go that way. Now you're doing the truth only because it's the truth. Ella Shadayan Inzo Bir, says the Rebbe, this is not a sufficient explanation. Because this quality that you do the commandments only in order to do what God wants, there are other commandments also. There's commandments which are called chukim. Like Rashi says, they're only the decree of God without any reason. For instance, it's forbidden for a Jew to eat milk and meat together. Why is it forbidden to eat milk and meat together? Because God said, one second, you can eat meat, 100%. You can eat milk, 100%. You can eat meat right after milk? Yeah, you're supposed to wash out your mouth. Yeah. Can you eat milk right after meat? No. Why not? Because God said. Come on, that makes no sense. First of all, God didn't say it. The rabbi said it. Well, God said you have to listen to the rabbis. Hey, that doesn't make any sense either. I am supposed to do one nonsensical thing, listen to the rabbis. And what are the rabbis occupied in? Telling me that I shouldn't eat milk after meat. You have to wait. Some people say you have to wait an hour. Some people say you have to wait 3 hours, some 6 hours. Why should I do it? Because the rabbis say. Why should I listen to the rabbis? Because the Torah says. What benefit do I get out of it? So there's a lot of commandments that are like that, like the sacrifices. You do it only because God said. It doesn't make any sense. So why doesn't it say by those other eating milk and meat, etc.? Why doesn't it say by the others, do it because God said? Listen to the rabbis. Why? Because God said. Okay, let's see. L'chora, at first glance, as the Rebbe, Efshar Lomar, maybe we can say like this. Alpi Mashkatuv, according to what the Ramban said, Nachmanides, he lived like, 100 years after Maimonides, after Moshe ben Maimon. That's the Rambam. This is Rosh Moses ben Nachman. The Nogea Lechukim. By these, he explains, he comments on these laws which are not understandable, like the red cow and things like that. In a kavanah, it doesn't mean that these are decrees of the king. Shatia Gazeros, these are the Gazeros, these are the decrees of the king of kings, God, in some place without any reason. Raka Chukim, these are decrees of the king, Asher Yachuk B'Malchuto, that God made in his kingship without that he revealed the reason. Umakablim Otam, with the fear of the king. But all of them, says the Ramban, all of these, like not eating meat after milk and the red cow, the law of the red cow, all of you are not supposed to wear garments that have linen and wool together. Says all of these, we don't know the reason, but it's just we don't know the reason. But all of them really do have reasons and some sort of a benefit. According to this, we can say that this is the difference between all of the other incomprehensible laws of the Torah that don't make any sense, and the sacrifices. The laws that don't make any sense, like we said, of the milk and meat, etc., right? Even though that doing them by the Jewish people is only because we fear the king, that we do, it's just a decree of God without knowing the reason for it. Nevertheless, from God's point of view, there is a reason. There is some sort of a secret, which is not the case of the sacrifices. The whole idea of the sacrifices is doing what God said. There's no logic to it at all, not even by God. God's only reason is he wants us to do what he says. The whole content and the reason for the sacrifices is, I am telling you something and you have to do what I say. And there's no other. I mean, listen, the fact is we see that almost in everything, right? Let's say you have a heart surgeon, right? A heart surgeon. So he makes heart surgery. The guy's an atheist, a total atheist, right? Heart surgeon. So he starts you just ask him a question. 1 second. You're making a heart operation. Why don't you make it on his hand? Why in his heart? Excuse me, what? What? Why make a heart operation in the middle of a person's chest? I mean, that's a very vital place. Why not make it on his hand? And then it won't be so painful and won't be so long. So because that's not where the heart is. The heart is in the middle of the. Why? What do you mean, why? That's just the way it is. You mean you don't ask why the heart is over there? Says that's just the way the heart is. It's just in the middle of the person's chest. That's the way it was created. Who created it that way? His parents. I don't know. Nature did, whatever it is. But that's it. You don't ask questions. That's the way things are. Right? So there's a lot of things which in reality, which are totally incomprehensible. In fact, if you look at it closely, everything is incomprehensible. Right? The law of gravity. Who passed the law of gravity? The quarks, whatever these, all these, whatever is principles of physics, of mathematics, of things like that. These are incomprehensible. You can't understand why they work. You know, why is 1 and 1 2? Why is 1 and 1? Why is it not 1 and 1 7? I guess there are alternative, plans of math. So here we're saying the point of the matter is like all these scientists, which is a pretty big joke. They're trying to figure out where the world came from. What was there before the world was there? Which is a stupid question because, okay, you can say what was there before the world as we know it was there. But if there was something before the world, then that's part of the world. That's part of the world. There's a black hole, right? So it was a blacker hole. Then there was a white, green hole. What it was a green streak. But that makes no sense. Right? It was a double vacuum, a triple vacuum. What was it? But there was a vacuum. There was something there. What was there before the vacuum? What was there before spirit? What was there before that? What was there? This is not the realm of science. Science does not deal with absolute truth. It deals with interrelationships. But what's absolute truth is incomprehensible. And that's reflected in the sacrifices. Absolute truth. You're doing things only because God said. But we can't explain that with Rashi. Why? So what did the Ramban say? All of the other commandments, which are not understandable, they do have a reason by God. The only one that doesn't have any reason, even by God, God just told us to do it because he wants us to do it, that's all, is the sacrifices. So therefore it says, my will, you're doing because you're doing my will. That's all. God said, I want it. There's no logic behind it. Only will, no logic. That's what the Ramban says. It says, but you can't explain that way in Rashi. Why? Rashi, the simple meaning of Rashi, this is talking about when the Rashi talks about the other statutes that have no reason, he says that there's no reason known to us. That's what Ramban says, but Rashi says they have no reason at all. Like he says about chukim, she'ein tam b'davar, there's no reason. Like the red cow. He doesn't say that there's no reason known to us. So it seems that by Rashi, that Rashi is saying not only the sacrifices have no reason at all, not even to God, but all of the chukim, all of the laws which are illogical, like milk and meat, they have no reason at all. You're just only because God wants. Shalishita, so that according to Rashi, there's no reason at all, logical reason, even to God for these laws. Not just that we don't know what it is. If so, we come back to the same question. Why are sacrifices different than all the other, according to Rashi? Maybe we can say that, the sacrifices don't have any reason at all. And also all these other laws, like don't eat milk and meat, etc., they also don't have any reason at all, not even to God. We're just doing it because God wants. So why does Rashi only explain here? What's the difference between sacrifices and the others? We can say, according to what Rashi said, that I spoke and my will was done. So we can say, nachat ruach, the pleasure of God, is from this, that a person does what he wants. It should have said that I spoke and you did what I said, not that it was done. This indicates on something was done automatically, not that you did it. Since that the main stress is that you did my will, so why does Rashi say in the beginning that I spoke? Why doesn't he say that I wanted to or I commanded, etc.? And we can't give an answer that this is because it's talking about over here in the sacrifices of free will offering. Not that I wanted, you decided to give the sacrifice, but free will offerings. That's what it's talking about. Korban Nadava. It's talking about free will offerings. Because before in Parshas Tetzaveh, it's talking about obligation sacrifices that you had to bring. Moses commanded that you have to bring. This was the 7 days of the inauguration. Okay. Nevertheless, Rashi says that I spoke. Okay, so Rashi, but again, let's see where we're at. Rashi seems to disagree with the Ramban. Rashi seems to say that all of the commandments, which are called chukim, like don't eat milk and meat, that even God doesn't know the reason. There is no reason. God just said. So the Rebbe says, okay, let's explain this. How can it be? First of all, we see a little bit of a difference over here. Rashi says that with the sacrifices, it says, I spoke and my will was done. It's almost like passive. It was done. Also, Rashi says over here that I spoke and my will was done. Why didn't God say I commanded and my will was done? Why does it? So as the Rebbe says, it seems to me that what's going on over here, that Rashi wants to explain the novelty in sacrifices regarding all the other sacrifices, including and other commandments, rather, even the commandments which are not understood, like milk and meat. What does Rashi want to say? Here we go. Rashi wants to say the intention of chukim, and I think, you know what I'm going to do? I think maybe we'll stop here. Should we stop over here? Yes, we'll do this tomorrow. We have tomorrow. Huh? We have tomorrow. Good. So essentially what we've done up to now, we've come back to the same question that we had in the beginning. But now according to Rashi, Ramban gives a nice answer. That the sacrifices are different because the sacrifices are the only commandment that even God doesn't have a reason. He just wants us to do it because he wants. Right? So we've explained it according to Ramban, but according to Rashi, it's not explainable. Rashi seems to indicate that all the other chukim, like milk and meat, don't eat pork, etc., that even God doesn't have a reason. We're only doing it because God said. So how do we explain what's the difference between sacrifices and the other commandments according to Rashi? We'll talk about that, God willing, tomorrow. Huh? What do you say? Yeah, I think that's what we'll do. 1 second. Let me just see where this goes up to. Yeah. Yeah, that's what we'll do tomorrow. We'll finish it tomorrow.